And we're back. Welcome back. Bits and Bytes podcast here. We are super excited for well, if those of you don't know what our flight instructor is doing over there, 12. We are on episode 12. Gosh, I can't believe we're that far along. This is amazing. Keep putting out good content. Enjoying our time with our listeners. Hopefully y'all are enjoying it as well. Love to get some feedback. If anybody has, any areas that they want us to dive into, go deeper on, that's what this is about, right? So as I say that, let me level set us real quick. So the Bits and Bytes podcast was created to share updates, innovations, trends, and best practices in the technology space. Our goal is to create a community to learn and grow from one another. That's what we're here to do today. Artie, thanks for joining us. We got some great guests. We're going to introduce them here. Yeah. My name is Matt Scott with my co-host,
Joey Wenzler.
And we got Adam Kingery. Adam leads up our SLED channel along with our great partners in crime. And we really appreciate you guys. TCSG over there. Artie, thanks for being here with us.
No problem. I appreciate it.
We got a lot of great things to talk about today. As we do with our Bits and Bytes podcast, we like to keep it light, airy, dive into things that are of interest of those of our listeners, as well as go off any tangents that we might, go there.
And I'd like to start with a tangent. Artie Laidler, IT director for the technical college system of the whole Peach State. So let me just level set with that. So that's 22 colleges on 88 campuses with over 600 program options. Needless to say, you're probably pretty busy.
Yes.
Man, what's it like to be IT director for the whole technical college system of Georgia?
I'm enjoying it. I've been in this role almost 2 years. Hey, it's a new thing every day. So.
Yeah. But one of the beautiful things about Artie's position is even though he's only been doing this for a couple of years, you've been in the system for a while. So he's built incredible relationships with all of the schools that roll up underneath system office. TCSG is kind of unique in a sense. It's got a parent, which is the system office, which really helps provide guidance and standardization and control and support of all of the schools that roll underneath it, which is very different to what we find in a lot of states, even within our Peach State. On the state school and university side, all the schools largely roll kind of independent, do their own thing. The network that ties them all together is the same, but they all kind of do their own thing. So TCSG has done a fantastic job of supporting their end users and schools that roll up underneath them to help keep them on the right path.
Yeah.
I think you said something really great, and kudos to you, Artie, for your growth within the organization. Getting that solid foundation, figuring out how things are done, how we work in this environment, and then getting into you said you've been in it for 2 years, your expanded role. Having that foundation allows you to get so much more accomplished because you're not learning how to get stuff done as you're deploying and implementing things. So I know that I speak on the behalf of ByteWorks. We love working with you and your forward thinking. We're super excited. And, with that, why don't we talk about one of the areas in which we've seen such expansive thinking on? I mean, maybe tee it up, Adam. Yeah. So what we're finding, and we had done an earlier video, episode 2, about some of the things that we were doing with the technical college system and creating a community on Webex Teams, which is a platform that I know you and we use a lot, which is basically a platform for group chat and discussion, which you can escalate into meetings, into video calls, into other things. But it's a persistent space with which you can create communities of people. And one of the reasons that we were doing that is TCSG as a whole is in the middle of a shift in the way that you guys handle communications. It used to be that with regards to communications, we would have on-premise telephone systems at every single school. Back in the day, those systems, if you had multiple sites, weren't even connected. Like literally the phone system would be for that site. And that one site would have connectivity to a local PSTN provider, and that was it. They didn't communicate with other people. You couldn't do anything else. But we're moving to a place where now, we've got things like Webex Teams where everybody is connected, everybody is federated, and everybody can communicate, whether that's TCSG and ByteWorks or TCSG and other vendors and other things like that. So
one of the things that we've been doing, right, is migrating from these on-premise systems to these cloud-based systems.
Adam, when you were explaining that, I heard limitations, from the beginning. I'd love to get your take on that, Artie, having been through this. Like, what's kind of opened up by doing that?
So I've been dealing with a lot of the phone systems from way back when. So I was introduced to Call Manager. I think we were on like version 9, 10 around that time. So looking at Call Manager then and looking at it now, it's just more of the administration is the key. Back in the days, it would take, hey, I got to put a phone in. I got to make sure Jabber works. I got to make sure the voicemail works. So I'm bouncing all over the place. And, being new to it back then, not want to ask questions, but I want to figure it out on my own. It may have taken me an hour to get one phone set up for one user.
What's that like now?
Oh, it's a 5-minute task. So I have a lot of new staff, so they don't really know about the Call Manager. They just, hey, this is Webex Calling, and I show them how to add one phone, and they're gurus. They're like, hey, you could do this too. I said, they're learning on their own.
I love it.
Because how the ease of access of everything in one place with Webex Calling.
Yep. Yeah. And one thing I love too that you acknowledged was growing from our staff, right? Allowing them to learn about different capabilities, allowing them to explore. And, what's amazing is that they're able to do that, right? It's not this extremely complex process that only one person can speak Greek, right? So allowing your staff members to explore the various features, capabilities, which I've seen it, and I'm sure, I want to get your opinion, but it continues to grow, like the capabilities.
Absolutely. And Artie, we were talking about this earlier, but just, the amount of like physical hardware and different management interfaces associated with on-premise phone systems and calling. How many servers did you say that you guys had?
Just from a small footprint, you may have 6 to 7 servers just to run your systems. And if you want redundancy, you want those subscribers, you have to build out another server. So you're looking at maybe a 15, 16 server setup just to have a stable phone system.
Yeah. And each one of those servers might be virtual, right? And each one of them has VMware loaded on them. And with VMware these days, that can get to be a very costly proposition to have 16 servers with virtual CPUs all running all these various things, right? Because you got Call Manager for regular voice calling. You got Unity for voicemail. You got IM Presence for team chat and visibility. You got Contact Center for like help desk or admissions. You got maybe third-party applications for like zone paging and alerting and E911, CER, all this stuff, right? And all of those require servers. And they all have a different management interface, which you need training on every single one of those different management interfaces and how to actually manipulate them and scale them, right? And it's crazy.
What I heard, Artie, by you explaining the change and shift in the time that it takes to deploy, even just a single phone, let alone a complete system, is I was part of this presentation where a gentleman threw up a picture of an accounting firm from the 50s, and it was wide open space, and there was hundreds of accountants sitting in a room counting with their German machine, their German accounting machine, basically like beads and stuff, right?
Abacus.
Abacus, yeah. People were scared about, what is technology going to do to accountants? And people said, think about this. This firm right now, how many accountants do you think they have in this day and age? And everybody's like, well, what does it look like now? They're like, they're down to 1 or this. You know what? They're 10x, because what happened was there's 10x more accountants in the market now, because now they're not manually doing this with their German counting machines. They are literally becoming business consultants. Yeah. They're delivering value to businesses. And so now some of these functions that they were being used for, they're now taking that. And what I hear is, Artie, you are now taking your time and efficiencies and deploying it back into the business on how can we do more? How can we be more to the colleges that we support? How can we collaborate, integrate? And I see you being much more expansive within the organization versus where we were circa, and it's not even that long ago. What's crazy, right? Like it's circa 10 years ago or so, right? Maybe a little bit longer, but still crazy. But I didn't mean to go off on a riff there, but I see the change in embracing technology and allowing us to do more with where we're going. And kudos to you and TCSG for that forward thinking, because there's still people migrating. And so I'd like to learn a little bit more from you too around some of the advantages and capabilities that you're experiencing, whether it's your team or whether it's just capabilities from doing that on-prem migration to the cloud.
I got you. So just not even too far, a month before, I think Cisco put out a vulnerability about, hey, you need to patch Unity and with XYZ. So, we get these tickets in. It's like, hey, how you do this? Or what do I got to do? And, I'm like, I'm on Webex Calling.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do any patching. And, a lot of that maintenance and downtime, we don't have to have any of that with moving to the cloud platform. And just like Adam was saying, it's still a learning curve. Even I'm used to doing it. And I'm like, hey, how do I do that? I got to go back and look through some notes from years ago on just, the particular things, because it is something you have to learn, because a lot of things with the on-prem platforms, they're not making those scalable. They're not making those where, hey, I want you to be able to use those. They're trying to, I want you to go cloud. So a lot of those, you don't have to worry about the downtime, getting all of those things set up. So, that's my biggest push is like, hey, we got forward thinking, we have different staff at the various schools. So let's just work on ease of access administration, where we don't have to go back and try to learn these systems that nobody's really using anymore. So we can use that time where we're wasting to learn these old systems on something newer.
The abacus, or the German counting machine that Matt brought up, really made me think about that, right? We were talking about different management interfaces for every single application. And when you plan upgrades, I mean, Artie,
It was a lot.
I know that you've done this. It's like, well, can we upgrade Unity without upgrading Call Manager? Can we upgrade this without upgrading? No, you've got to upgrade it, and it has to happen in the sequence. But now you're like 3 revisions back, so we can't even go directly to where you want to go. We've got a pit stop in the middle.
And which one broke it?
And which one broke it? And it's like, there was a ton of planning required to actually do this stuff, and all that takes tons of time and effort. And if things break, you got to go back and figure it all out, right? So now, instead of having 100 different interfaces, where does all that show up now, Artie?
It's in one single pane. And
Love it.
It's so easy to use. So like I have my team meetings. We have everything is just Webex. It's just, we got all of our collaboration, even with our external vendors, they all have Webex. We just, it's not about setting a meeting. I can search you by email address and bam, we're in a space. We're in a meeting just like that. I think my biggest thing with Webex Calling, a lot of my IT directors at the school, they're like, he's just pushing us. He's just trying to make us go there. And they know I am, because I know everybody has a workload. Sure. And, our biggest thing is how can we alleviate the workload so that we can put that time somewhere else. So that's, that's my biggest reason for this push. And, this is why I want to talk about it. So,
yeah. Technology used to be a support function, right? So it used to be, hey, we're going to get you all set up, make sure your phone's working, make sure you have access to, your devices are working, and make sure you have access to the network and all that stuff. But now it's a necessity, right? So every single functional division within a college system or a college organization, they all need technology to do whatever they want to do. Hey, we want to roll out this new thing. Okay, can we do that? How can we? So it's a strategic member at the table now, and I could see you being pulled into so many more things, everything. I mean, a president wants to open up a new facility. Well, first person he's going to talk to is probably you, if not second person.
And the follow-up to that is, what is the maybe one or two biggest objections that you get from people as you try to actually just help them?
Well, cost. And, I'm not saying this just because I'm on the podcast with Byteworks, but Adam has worked great with all of our schools, with their ROIs. And, it's like, hey, it cost this much the first year, but let's look at year 2. Let's look at year 3. Because if you're really about cost savings, that's what I want to look at.
Yep.
And each year, it was a cost savings. So when they're looking at these spreadsheets, it's like, I want to say no, but I'm saving money every year if I do just make the initial leap. But, just with a lot of things, it's always cost. So we're able to see those cost advantages. So that's really the biggest push to get us on this migration tour.
Artie, when you're looking at that, do you look at cost of doing things twice, or cost of time it might take if you decided to save cost on the front and what it actually costs on the back? I'm just curious from your lens, like, is there consideration not just from a price tag, but actually cost of efficiencies, cost of doing business, and where does that sit in your kind of evaluation?
So we look at that as a whole as well, because like I like to tell folks, it has to make sense. If it makes sense for you to stay here, I understand.
Yeah.
But like you said, going back to efficiency, with the time management of my folks that I'm training, I spend so much time here, but if you go here, you just take the leap, just get it out the way. Now I'm being efficient, all the way down the line with other applications that I got to deal with, not just the phone system.
Yep.
And I've actually seen some of the directors get kind of excited about this. They almost feel empowered by going through this process of really investigating the costs associated with one versus the other.
Yeah.
And you brought up the ROI. I geek out on spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets.
I'm going to get kind of personal here. I'm sorry for you who are not used to this, but you're talking about cost savings. I mean, on average, what is, year 3, 4, 5, how much money or percentage of money of their budget are they saving? Doesn't have to be an exact number because budgets differ, right? But percentage wise or that kind of thing.
Either some of the ones I've been seeing per year is, between 15, 20K. So, look at that over a 3-year span, I could allocate those funds for something else that I can be progressive and forward towards.
Wow.
And it's not even just that, right? So we're shifting money in some ways, but it's making a lot of the schools' lives easier. And what I mean by that is a lot of the schools are taking advantage of Cisco PSTN as a portion of this and moving off of their local service providers and taking that to the cloud. And I know this might sound silly, but some of the schools actually had multiple service providers. So they were getting phone numbers at different sites from different carriers. And a lot of them, I shouldn't say this, none of them were paying for any lines or anything like that they shouldn't have been paying for.
That happens all the time.
None of that happened. Actually, it
built,
happens
right? You just grow as an organization, and things just
But where I was going with that is by migrating to the Cisco PSTN, all of that visibility is inside of your Webex control hub now. You have absolute control over all of your numbers and lines on a per user basis. You can run reports on that stuff. So So I feel like it's empowering to some of these directors because now they actually know how much they're paying for users. And that in turn saves them money because they might have been paying a little bit more in a traditional fashion. The reporting was horrible. It would take weeks to get. Then you'd have to go back to the provider and be like, cancel these 15 lines, these 100 lines. And it would take another 3 months to do that. So it's like, this gives them control back, right?
And that goes back to what we're talking about, that one pain and say, hey, we had 50 people leave. I don't have to go. I can just go into Webex Calling, delete. And now I'm not paying for those numbers again. So like you said, you have visibility into everything that you want to do. And you can save money as you go.
Yeah. And I want to bring up one thing real quick, Joey, before I forget it, because I'm like one end ear out the other. We were talking about paying for lines and stuff like that. 911 has been a big thing that the schools have embraced as a part of this. Tell me how the migration has been from, not having CER or having CER to getting to Red Sky and what the experience has been there.
Going back to how do I set this up? So a lot of folks like, hey, I know we want this, but how do I go about setting up CER? And you can go online, get documentation, but I don't know what that is, and it's 2012 or 2015. So whatever the newest applications, they're not matching documentation. It's like you're trying to set something up. I don't see that screen. And going back with Webex Calling with Red Sky, you don't have to do any of that. It's not a learning curve. Once I show you one time, and like go back with Webex, we record it, show you one time, and it's like, oh, that's all, and that's it. There's no setting up another server, no worrying about is it connecting into the other server, my passwords, all is the firewall good? Are we getting through? All of these things you have to prepare to set up different environments just for one thing to work together, and it's all working in one single page.
Who doesn't want an easy button?
Well, and
Right.
and the reason why that's so important is life safety, right? Like this is helping a lot of these schools become compliant on a number of different things, like Ray Baum's Act and Kerry's Law and some of these other ones that are coming down the line. Now, by moving to the cloud, just like we were talking about with upgrading Call Manager and upgrading Unity and having to patch things and fix things, all of that is built in now. So these schools don't even have to worry about, am I compliant? Am I not compliant with the 911 life safety stuff? It just automatically happens. Automatically happens.
Yeah, it's great. Artie, in your role, one of the things we were talking about a little earlier was change. And, I hear flexibility capabilities screaming. You talked about like the ease of setting up, but like, are classrooms staying the same as they were before? Are they changing? Are facilities staying the same? Do you see change in like layout, and does this help you from a standpoint of making those evolutions easier?
It does. A lot of our classrooms, we were heavy telepresence. So now it's like, hey, but to set up telepresence, it's a task in itself to set that up. And now you have these rooms in Webex. You go to the calendar. It's a one button. I got a classroom set up on the calendar. It's like, hey, students could just walk in. It's working. Nobody has to do anything. That helps with enrollment. Maybe I couldn't get a teacher somewhere, but now I can have a remote site. I got 10 to 20 students here, and versus maybe I would not have been able to have a class, but leveraging Webex Calling and all of that on the back end, now you're able to have virtual classrooms.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that made me think of eCampus and the ability to, regardless of the campus or the school, you could be enrolled at Gwinnett Tech, for example. We're sitting in Gwinnett County right now, but you could take a class that's offered maybe at South Georgia Tech around aviation, because one of their focuses of their campus is aviation. So they have the best instructors around aviation at that school. But if I'm in Gwinnett County, I don't have that instructor. So it truly allows you to be able to access experts anywhere via video, right? And it's not like, hold on, what IP address am I dialing into to connect these systems? Do I have the proper bandwidth to make all this work? What if, this happens or that happens? To your point, that one button to push, and if you tie it into Active Directory and calendaring, right, you can create that room in there so they could literally type in at WebEx and at Coruscant or whatever the name of the room is. And then that room automatically gets included in that meeting. And if you can auto record it, now not only are we having that meeting and all the right resources are involved, but we can actually record the meeting and then have that recording after the fact to share with students, with faculty for quality assurance. Maybe we hired a new instructor for aviation or something like that. Well, how do you guys do this? Like, what's your general flow for, day one class, 202, whatever it is?
I mean, honestly, I hear, if I was like in the seat of a president or at admissions, somebody that's in charge of admissions, like differentiation. You just got a unique value proposition. You have capabilities that others don't to expand and give different learning and curriculums that might not have been available to others.
It's just about opportunity, right? So on episode 2, we had Jeremy Johnson. Hey, Jeremy. But he talked about there was a program for those interested in marine biology, right? But you couldn't access it in certain parts of the state, but they had thought leaders in that space, and you're just one WebEx meeting away from absorbing that information and being immersed into your passion in life. So technology is not only a necessity, but it's also like tapping into the passions of the next generation, which is exactly what it should be doing, right? It's not just about people who know technology, you know it or you don't. You know it and you're using it to benefit yourself.
I got one question. So we've been kind of asking you or, letting you explain out some stuff. So I'd be curious, just, is there anything that we might not have touched on or that capabilities that you appreciate or leverage? Maybe what's your favorite feature or whatnot of
maybe the integrations too?
Yeah, just try to gain from you sitting in your seat what you're experiencing.
But one of the biggest things, like I said, we and my team, we don't have to worry and sit on how to figure things out. Like I said, we're very busy. We're doing a lot of different tasks, so we're able to do the Webex calling piece, phone administration, voicemail, all this other stuff, and get this out the way. So we're able to work on other tasks. So that's really my biggest takeaway from the lift and shift to Webex calling. And like I said, we were on-prem while I've been at the system office. I won't say I had a lot of folks move and go to different positions, but that's a good thing coming from under us, because most people are help desk technicians. So, hey, you got 2 years, you're going to learn, and I want you to progress. We get that, and it just, with the Webex calling piece, it just really helps me out to where I'm not having to start over. It's like hey, let's do this again. Let's do this again. Webex calling is like, hey, pretty much I can give it to you and let you. And a lot of times you're new, you're like, hey, I don't want to break anything.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so real.
And now it's like, hey, you're fine. Even if you break it, I always had one of my bosses tell me, if you break it, just know how you broke it. And we can always fix it. And that's one thing I've always used is like, hey, work on anything you want, just remember what you did. But like if it was on-prem and I break on-prem call manager, or I make click the wrong button, it's the phone trouble. Now, I'm gonna be in the principal's office.
Right.
So, but I do just like the ease of access. Like I said, you gotta be able to progress, and just not just in the phone systems, but just any facet of technology at this point.
I will never forget this, and I probably shouldn't call this out, but the people that were involved at the time are no longer with us. I remember being at Columbus Tech when we did their migration to call manager. We got their call manager set up when they were going to on-premise from Centrex. And I remember Steven was on site with us, and he's like, AT&T's numbers did not port. The 800 number to the school was literally down for hours at Columbus Tech. This was like a decade ago now. Sweat. But it's just like, the phone would be ringing, but the phone won't ring. So like, I'm just waiting for the president of the campus to come down and like scream at us and stuff. But it's like porting numbers has gotten so much easier now than it used to be. And we still have to have 30 to 45 days, but porting has gotten a lot more accurate than it used to be. And it used to be like, you say a prayer and you're like, please ring, please ring, please ring, and it's just gotten so much easier so that, like your point, now you can focus on higher level tasks and you're not worrying about keeping the lights on. Now it's about changing the color of the lights or making them flicker or, follow the music beat or whatever, right? Because that's what I think about. My son's like, I want this smart light that connects to Wi-Fi so that I can have my iPhone in this app. And when the music's playing, it can like pulse and then change colors. I'm like, when I was growing up, I had like incandescent bulb. I was just like, man, that thing gets hot,
So thank you for the party right here. I got that visual in my head, and him in a leisure suit with a disco ball. I don't know where that came from, but I think a good place to go is forward here. And I think a good question to maybe ask is, if you are, maybe a thought leader or somebody in a position of leadership at one of these universities, and you know there's better available because you've just watched this awesome podcast with Artie Laidler, you're thinking, what steps can I take, right? What's the first step to take to make things better, not only for the staff at your university, but also the over 30,000 graduates last year alone from the TCSG program? Think about the lives impacted just by a technology decision. Boom. What do you do with all that? What's the first step they can take?
Well, since we're talking about, Webex calling and whatnot, we were talking about how can I reach my students? How can I get more students? I want to be able to touch more lives. That goes back to the ease of access, the accessibility. And that's what we leverage at our schools, with just the classrooms and making sure that we can touch everybody, going back to eCampus. Because, hey, I may have somebody in North Georgia who wants to do something, but they don't teach it. And, they teach it heavily in the South. And, that is what it's all about. And say, hey, this person, I touched this person's life way up here.
Yep.
And because they thought they couldn't do something because of their service area.
Yep.
That's what, the beauty of it. And that's one of the biggest things that the technical schools, coming from our system office as well with our administration, they really teach, hey, let's get our workforce in. Let's make sure we're affecting the workforce. Let's get graduates and job placement. That's the biggest things when it comes from our organization, our agency is a job placement. You always hear workforce. That's what we leverage.
It's so huge. I went to Lanier Tech yesterday for their EV and Beyond. It was actually hosted by the Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce, and I'd never been to one of these meetings before. It was hosted at Lanier Tech at their conference center, which is one of the TCSG schools for those that don't know. Their president there, Tim McDonald, was there, as well as Ray Parent. Dr. Ray Parent was there. And they had all of the EV manufacturers. And this all ties back in because it comes back to economic development, workforce development. Rivian was there. Rivian is based here in the state. TCSG is very well tied to Rivian and their success down on the south side of Atlanta. So a lot of people don't know, but TCSG has 3 different facets. They have their adult ed programs, which has everything to do with helping students get their high school diploma. Then they have what they're known for the most, which is technical education, skills trade, things like that. But we're largely getting into networking, cybersecurity, a lot of those arenas. Out in Augusta, the cyber centers out there, Augusta Tech.
Yeah.
I saw Dr. Whirl out there talking about that. I think it's actually going on right now, their cybersecurity summit out there. So the tech colleges are very tied into cybersecurity and what's going on in that arena and supplying these companies and businesses with that. Hyundai obviously has a giant presence here in Georgia. They're building a small facility outside of the Savannah area that's going to generate lots of jobs. As a part of TCSG, they've got Quick Start, which helps new businesses for the first 1 to 3 years get a foundation, create programs to help train their employees in the skills that they're going to need to work. And then from there, from years 3 to 5, they hand that off to the local technical college, which in this case would be Savannah Tech, to help take it from there. So TCSG is like super tied to what you were describing, Joey, which is from before you graduate high school all the way into programs, employment, and not just employment, but upskilling and taking it to the next level. So, I mean, it's in communication is where all that ties back to, right? Having access to the right resources, eCampus. If you're not in the right area, you have connection to the right area. It's not, I'm down in Vidalia, Georgia, and we don't have that here,
Yeah.
You have access to Atlanta. You have access to the global market from a lot of these businesses that may have headquarters here like Hyundai, right? But, they've got global presence. So we've got access to all those things through communication. And I want to touch on this real quick, Artie. One of the big things that happened last year was that Department of Labor kind of split off and employment services came to work underneath TCSG. Can you help me understand how having Webex Calling kind of helped that process flow a little bit better? Because System Office got like twice the size real quick.
Yes. So we grew, we doubled in numbers though. Even from a tech perspective, it's like, hey, we doubled our numbers. So let's be progressive and plan. So Webex Calling was on the table because, at that time we were still on-prem. We were in that gray area, like, hey, I want to go to it. And, once we really sat down, looked at the numbers, looked at, is it beneficial to go here? And, with all the different sites, I can't remember the exact amount of locations, but just imagine trying to, if you didn't have Webex calling, but all of these different employees needed phone numbers. So now I'm trying to say, hey, am I getting a number from this provider at this site? Hey, I got to pay you for this site. So now I'm trying to split billing. I'm trying to do all of this. Huh. But now with Webex calling, we leverage, and it was great to leverage that at this point. And it really made sense because I don't have to do all of that. And I just have to make sure that, hey, you have an account and you got a phone number just like that. As long as you have an account, it integrates with everything.
This is really huge because, it was basically doubling the size of System Office in a matter of a few days, really. And different.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Did old Artie get a little nervous there when you heard that? You're like, old Artie said, oh, man, we're going to need a lot more people to help out. New Artie said, this is a breeze.
What I knew, but like I said, we were in that gray area. Like, hey, I want to go to Webex calling, but once I started thinking and the rest of our upper management, it was like, hey, that's the way to go. Mm-hmm. And I
love it.
It was easy. Once we actually went to Webex calling, even just the migration piece of it. Mm. I know we haven't really spoke on that piece, but we got time for me to speak on that?
Yeah, please do.
All right, so the migration piece of it, you have to plan. I like to, tell folks, you have to pre-plan this. And the biggest thing that I've come in contact with even with our agency and then with some of the technical schools were, maybe the phones. That was maybe the biggest cost. Make sure you have the phones that are compatible with Webex calling. Mm. And a lot of the times, hey, let's get that router out of the way. Let's go straight to the cloud. So those are things that we are learning on different migrations. Like, hey, you can keep the on-prem router and go that route, but why? Mm-hmm. So, we've done a lot of these migrations now. Now we're able to compare and figure out why do we want to go this route or why don't we? So a lot of people are just going straight to the cloud platform. And then even with the migration of porting the numbers, I spoke with one of the colleges and I was like, hey, what happened during the porting? Because I was a little nervous because that was one of the ones that was like, hey, everything's been going good. Nothing's bad. So I'm like, I'm glad it's going good. And they were like, well, we just got to port the numbers. So I sent them a message on Webex. I was like, hey, what happened? It was like, hey, they said, wait like 5 minutes. It was cut over. And, just that process of cutting them over, all they needed was a CSR. And that was it. They were like, well, it was just pretty much hands off. And then, speaking with those who actually were doing porting before my time, they would like, hey, you had to do this. We had to wait.
They were waiting for it.
Yeah. They had to wait till they generate this file for me so I can compare, what may have took a month or two to do. They literally cut this over and
they're like, Artie, you're a magician.
all I could do is point them to the right people.
That's awesome. I love that success story. That's huge.
Yeah, it's so huge. When I was thinking about employment services, I was thinking with System Office, all of your users are largely in one location. Mm-hmm. With employment services, they're in 50 different locations. So the ability to make it easy to bring online all of these new people and not have to worry about, placing them at different campuses. They can roam, and a lot of them do. They're out roaming, meeting with people, talking about employment, all that. Gone are the days where we need Expressway or we need VPN or we need something like that. Now they connect directly to the cloud. It's so much simpler and it just works. We configure it on the back end and everything just works, regardless of where you're geographically located, which is really huge.
I love it. Well, Artie, I speak on behalf of everyone here at ByteWorks. Thank you for coming here today. Thank you, most importantly, for trusting us and being a great partner with us. We're excited for where we're going. I know we have a lot of conversations, and so lots of good stuff. Thanks for making time out of your day to join us. Episode 12, Bits and Bytes podcast. We appreciate you.
All right, look, I appreciate you guys having me, just to be able to speak on, for my agency and how we integrate and do things with ByteWorks.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Artie.